Agenda item A, which is roll call list.
Supervisor Scott Belt, Commissioner Roger Garcia, Mayor Rusty Height.
Here.
Mayor Doug Kindig,
Here.
Commissioner David Cole, Councilmember Don Rowe,
Here.
Mayor Gene Smucker,
Here.
Mayor.
Commissioner just came in, Miles.
Oh, okay.
Here.
Commissioner Roger Garcia.
Can I have a motion for approval of the agenda? So moved. Liz?
Hold on a second. You're stepping ahead of me here.
I know.
That was motion by Height and second by Klug.
Correct.
Okay. Garcia,
Yes.
Height,
Yes.
Klug,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Kindig.
Yes. Can I have a motion to approve the board minutes from our April 24th meeting? So moved. Second. Liz?
Garcia,
Yes.
Height,
Yes.
Klug,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Kindig.
Yes. Agenda item D is our agency reports. Mike?
Sure, so I'm gonna go ahead and get started with just an update on some of the federal conversations that are going on. In your package, you have sort of a two-page summary that was put together by one of our colleagues over in on the rural side of Nebraska, but I think it's really indicative more broadly of just some of the conversations and their impacts on programs with the community of all sides. And so goes through Trump's skinny budget and kind of gives them sort of a framework for understanding what those impacts might be for rural Nebraska, but really it's rural Iowa as well. And many of these programs have formula funds that go to our largest communities too, particularly CDBG and those entitlement communities of Omaha, Council Bluffs, and Bellevue. And so this, I think, is just a really good framework for understanding some of what these funds are used for on a routine basis. But these cuts kind of across those HUD programs, those EDA programs, USDA rural development programs, and then even just kind of the more broad impacts to some of those more generalized programs as well. And so with that, do you mind pulling up that slide deck, Christina?
Yeah, I'm sorry, we're having serious issues with the computer here.
Okay, all right. Well, I'll do one thing. So with the election here in the city of Omaha, I think Jacqueline Morrison is planning to be here, but I don't know if I'll have a chance to say this later on. But with Jacqueline sort of being part of the mayor's staff and with the new administration, she won't be serving on the MAPA board anymore going forward. She may stay in the mayor's office. I don't think that's been decided yet. But I just wanted to thank her for her service to the MAPA board. She's done a great job for many years now here at MAPA. And really just a word of thanks to her. So if she does come in, we can echo that. But I wanted to just make sure I said that for all of you. June board meeting will be after the transition, which happens very, very quickly here. So one note here on our upcoming Council of Officials meeting. So we're hosting this on June 18th down at the venues at the Granary in Ralston, kind of a newer facility down there. We're going to be having David Roth speak for our Council of Officials meeting here in June. So our quarterly meeting and luncheon. And David's going to be really just kind of giving an update on the airport authority, where they are. You know, if you've traveled recently, you've seen a lot of the changes at the airport. They've gotten out of some of the behind the scenes improvements, and now they're really linking the two terminals and building some of the shared spaces that are going to be moving in. And really, we asked him to talk a little bit about, where the thinking and the planning from this started. A lot of this is, 20 or 30 years in the making. And so really good opportunity to hear from that really kind of major institutional partner about their upcoming work. So please join us if you have the time. And then Christina, I don't think I'm able to advance.
You haven't sent out an email, we sent out an email
Yeah.
or another one.
Yeah.
I don't have it on my calendar yet.
I'll send it over to you and
Yeah.
your staff.
And so then just a kind of a general community assistance report, just a number of things that we're working on, a lot of surveys and work for strategic planning in communities across the region. I've been meeting with some of our emergency management and disaster recovery partners and trying to understand some of the framework for MAPA and how we fit into that. And then really just a lot of events the past month where we've been participating in the dedication of Plaza del Raso, where, Commissioner Garcia was there as well. Valley, we attended the we attended the council meeting for the Safe Streets for All MOU, which I'm going to touch on a little bit more. State of Sarpy County, where many of you attended. And then Christine, if you want to go to the next slide. A number of other meetings here where we're working alongside our partners. In Alvo, we're working on some nuisance abatement work. In Springfield, another Safe Streets for All MOU. The Highway Commission was our District 2 meeting out in Fremont. So Fremont is also part of District 2. It's not just the MAPA region, but it includes Washington County and Dodge County down into Cass County, and then also Nebraska City, I believe. And so that was an interesting time to hear from Vicki Kramer, the director there, as well as commissioners on some of the status of what they're thinking at the state level about federal funding and other things. And then we just hosted a number of other meetings here with the market value analysis field visit, having that consultant team in town to work on all of that. And then a groundbreaking down in Papillion for the Tall Grass neighborhood, which is a partnership between Hoppy Development and Habitat for Humanity, really interesting affordable housing project down there as well. So a number of things going on in the region that MAPA staff are participating in. Christine, if you want to go to the next slide. I touched on this Safe Streets for All MOU. So we passed back in April, I believe, the final comprehensive safety action plan. This is kind of our regional plan that looks at needs across all the communities that tie to this goal of reducing fatal crashes and serious injuries to zero. And one aspect of that for communities to be eligible for this funds is this MOU that basically talks about, yes, they were involved in the planning process and they're committed to those same goals. And so we're working with communities now to get those, particularly communities that are interested in pursuing this round of federal funding, which is available through the end of June, I believe, June 26th. Thank you, Jim. And so we're putting together a regional application for some of that. There's some additional applications going in from the region, but this MOU is really an important status for that to be eligible, kind of showing this regional consortium allowing the local communities to be eligible for that new federal funding program through the bipartisan infrastructure law. So many thanks to the communities that have participated thus far, and we're ticking down the list here. So more to come in the weeks and months ahead. If you want to go to the next slide, Christina. So our team is hiring. So we're currently doing interviews for the communications and outreach intern. We had one of our transportation planners choose another career. So we are back hiring for a transportation planner 1. So if you know somebody interested in working at MAPA, that advertisement is out there now. And so we're looking to do that. And many thanks to Elle. I don't think she's here today. But Elle, I think this is one of her last days here. And tomorrow's actually her last day here on the MAPA staff. And so she was with us for about 4 or 5 months, but choosing kind of another opportunity. And we'll wish her well. But we're back hiring. So let us know if you know anybody in transportation planning. We're always looking to build that talent pool. And that is my remarks. Jackie, I did recognize you in absentia, but now you're here. So just wanted to thank you for your time on the MAPA board. Really appreciated your commitment to this and really digging into that for us, certainly as the executive director, but I think something shared by our board of directors as well here.
Thank you. If I might, Mike, I'd also just let the board know, thank you. Mayor Sather sends her regards and is happy with the work of MAPA and said thank you. I also met with Mayor-elect John Ewing yesterday, and he also wanted to let you all know that he is planning to attend the next meeting. And so hopefully you all, if you haven't met him, will get to meet him. And if you know him, Mayor Walsh, he said he'll be reaching out to you. So thanks.
Well, on behalf of the board, Jack, and we appreciate it. You can send back to Mayor Stoddard our gratitude for Omaha's support. Everybody in this room benefits from Omaha being the big dot on the map. And I think we all bring, our cities, all our counties all bring unique qualities and stuff, but Omaha has always kind of been the leader and stuff, and let her know that we appreciate that. And your time here has been, we've enjoyed your input and very in-depth questions, and on a little bit of a lighter note, your consistency of being 5 minutes late has helped for a couple of years now. So it's a good quality. That's okay. So, but no, we look forward to the change and stuff. It's an opportunity for growth. So thank you very much. I will go ahead. It's public comments now. This is not time on the agenda that we give the public, any individual right to address the board. I don't see anyone in the audience. Liz, you didn't have anyone reach out?
No, sir.
Very good. Item F is the consent agenda. If I could have a motion to approve, and I would take all four of those in one vote unless one of our board members wishes to pull something off.
Motion to approve, I
Second.
include.
Is there any further discussion or questions? Liz?
Garcia,
I think I'll technically abstain since one of the payments is going to Davis County JS. I'll abstain.
Height,
Yes.
Klug,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Kindig.
Yes. Item H is new business. Item number 1 is election of officers. Mike?
Yeah, so the board may recall back in December, we had kind of a new slate of officers with Mayor Kindig serving as chair and Mayor Walsh from Council Bluffs serving as vice chair with the departure of Carol Vinton from the board of directors. And at that time, kind of indicated that we plan on continuing that here after the beginning of the fiscal year. Just as a reminder, MAPA's interlocal requires that the board of directors chair and vice chair be from Iowa and Nebraska respectively, just splitting that. And that is what we are recommending here today. And so with your approval today, we would take that slate of officers to the council of officials.
So moved.
Second. Any further questions or discussion? Liz?
Garcia,
Yes.
Height.
Yes.
Klug,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Kindig.
Yes. Item number 2 is our benefits renewal, Christina, and I think I'll do the same thing here, really all the way through item E. I think they're all insurance related. Christina's going to cover. If you want to pull one of them off or discuss any of them throughout, please feel free. If not, we'll take one motion at the end of Christina's report.
Let's see if this is working. All right. Good afternoon. It is May, which means we are in the middle of our benefit renewal period. So MAP is on a July 1 through June 30 benefit plan year. So we're bringing recommendations for MAPA's health insurance plan as well as our dental and vision plans. In addition to that, we'll be making recommendations for MAPA's employer-sponsored life insurance plan, our long-term disability, so for our health insurance renewals, we're currently with NACO. Some of you may recall a couple of years ago, we moved to a subgroup under NACO. It's been a really great opportunity for MAPA. It's really allowed us to have access to a lot of different plan options. So that's been a great experience for us so far. NACO did come back this year for our Blue Cross plan. It's a PPO plan with an $1,100 deductible. For that plan, we came back with a 5.4% premium increase. The average increase that NACO saw across all of their groups was around 5%. And so that just means that MAPA's claim utilization just came in slightly higher. So our renewal came in slightly higher than the average of 5%. On the screen, you can see in the middle table there, that's MAPA's PPO plan. Those are our renewal rates. The gray box on top, those are our current rates that we're paying. So you can see on the far right, that shows our total premium increase of 5.4%. And then in the white box just to the left, that shows the change to the employees portion of the premium. MAPA does cover 93% for employee only. And then MAPA picks up 85% for employee plus child, employee plus spouse, or family coverage. So those are the changes in the white column there, that's the change to the employees portion of the premium. So in addition to the PPO plan, let me just also say no plan design changes for that plan. So we do have an internal benefits committee as well. There's representation from each department. And so all of our departments have someone that sits on that committee. We all review the renewal plans, and then that internal benefits committee takes those recommendations to our finance committee. So these recommendations are coming now through from our finance committee. So we are recommending to continue with our PPO plan, but also this year, NACO was offering a high deductible healthcare plan. A qualifying HDHP is what it's called. So we have in the past had staff mention that they were interested in MAPA offering a high deductible plan. It's a different option, and in my time here at MAPA, I've been here for 11 years, we've never offered any type of high deductible healthcare plan. We've only offered one health plan, but there has been considerable interest in that. And this year, NACO actually brought a new plan offering for a high deductible plan, and that's the table that you see there at the bottom. And so this plan actually has a $3,500 deductible, which is actually pretty favorable for a high deductible healthcare plan. And it's a max out of pocket of $6,000 for the individual. So we took this to our internal benefits committee, and there's quite a bit of interest in carrying this plan. In addition, NACO let us know that there's no requirement for MAPA there's no minimum participation in order for us to be able to offer this to our staff. So it just gives us an opportunity to have some diversity in the plan options. And for someone that doesn't maybe use their plan as much under PPO, it gives them the chance to have a little bit of savings on the premium. But really the primary thing that I think is a benefit is that we'll actually carry that with an employer-sponsored HSA health savings account. And so the premiums are quite a bit lower, but because MAPA picks up 93% for employee only and 85% for employee plus, the majority of that savings is on MAPA's side. So what we would like to recommend is that for the high deductible plan, the difference in the premium for the employer, we're going to have that amount go into an employer-sponsored health savings account. And so then MAPA's contribution, rather than going into a premium for maybe a PPO plan that someone's not using, could then go into a health savings account where the employee can accrue those funds. It's affordable, HSAs are portable, you own those funds, whereas a flex savings account, which we also offer, is a use it or lose it plan. And you're not able to take that with you if you were to separate your employment. So we are recommending the PPO plan that we continue with that plan with a 5.4% increase, and then we also offer the high deductible healthcare plan as well with an employer-sponsored HSA. The employee could also contribute into that. They would just have to remain under that maximum contribution limit that's set by the IRS every year. Are there any questions on the health insurance plan? So our dental plan offering is also carried under NACO. It's a Blue Cross Blue Shield plan. Some of you if you were here last year, you may recall that we shopped our dental plan. We looked at several different plan options, and this is when we made the transition to Blue Cross Blue Shield. From principal, and so our renewal came back with a 0% increase and no plan design changes. So we're looking to continue on with that plan with no changes. Any questions on dental? All right. So we are recommending a change to our vision plan. Our vision plan is 100% employee paid. And so currently we're carrying IMED, and that plan is a plan that we've had through Hub as a broker. So we are actually recommending a change to NACO's VSP Vision Care. National Insurance Services actually manages this plan for NACO, and I do have Megan Ware here from National Insurance Services, so if there are any specific questions on the plan coverage, and I'll also talk about our life and long-term disability here shortly, which National Insurance Services is manages that plan as well. But for the vision plan, there were kind of two different things we're looking at. The premiums are slightly higher, and it is employee paid, so this was something that we took to our benefits committee to see what the interest was. But as far as the plan offering, it's what's called a 12-12-12 plan, so you get your materials, your lenses, and your exams. You get coverage every year for, or every 12 months for that. So slightly better coverage there, but also this will allow us to bring all of our insurance plans under NACO. Whereas previously we had some under Hub, and then we had some under NACO, and so we were still required to use another vendor for our COBRA administration. Now that we'll be nesting all of our plans under NACO, we'll be able to utilize NACO's COBRA administration, and we won't have to pay an additional fee for that. So just trying to find some consistency in our plan offerings. So any questions on the VSP plan option that we're recommending? All right, and finally, life insurance and long-term disability. We're currently with Principal Financial Group. They came back with a premium increase. We have not had a life insurance claim nor a long-term disability claim in over a decade. So they were coming back with a premium increase. They did decide to hold the rate flat after we had mentioned to HUD that we wanted to shop that plan. But again, we reached out to NACO to see if there was a plan offering through NACO, and there was through National Insurance Services. So the box on the far right of this table here that you see highlighted in the purple, this is the life insurance and long-term disability offered through National Insurance Services. The rate came back lower, but another benefit to this is since we are currently a member of NACO and we carry NACO's health insurance and dental insurance through Blue Cross Blue Shield, National Insurance Services will automatically, for anyone that's has coverage on those plans, will automatically get $15,000 life insurance. And so that's a benefit that MAPA won't have to pay for. So for anyone that's already covered on those plans, if we pick up the life insurance and long-term disability through National Insurance Services, we're only gonna have to cover 35%. So we're gonna see a savings there, as well as the premiums, the rates came back quite a bit lower as well. So total premium change annually for both plans, life insurance and long-term disability, is almost a $2,500 savings for the agency annually. So we are recommending that we move from Principal Insurance to National Insurance Services for life insurance and long-term disability. And MAPA covers 50,000 for all full-time staff for life insurance. Any questions?
Any questions on any of these items for Christina? If not, I would take a motion to approve.
So moved, approve. Second, Height.
Further discussion? Yes? Thanks, Christina.
Garcia,
Yes.
Height,
Yes.
Klug,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Morrison, Welsh,
Yes.
and Dave.
Yes. Item number 3 is our purchases of new contracts. Number A is social pinpoint, safe streets and roads, 5,400. And then we've got our audit engagement letter, 43,975. Carlos?
On 3A social pinpoint, we're starting our work with RPD 18 and 13, that's the rural section of our MAPA administrative duties. We are kicking off Safe Streets for All studies in 7 different communities across RPA 18 and 13. This is just building a website for that information to get out to the local communities. Any questions?
Thank you. Matt, anything to add at all on the audit?
No, I just wanted to pull up we will have a new engagement because our previous engagement was for three years and that expired in this last audit. So they've reached out and given us another 3-year quote, but we are just going to engage with them for 1 year. We recommend to the board that we would just engage 1 year and then we'll revisit and perhaps go out and do a request for proposals for other vendors in the subsequent year. We just feel like the efficiencies that we've gotten working with the same auditors for the 3 years, and as you recall, some of our audits have gone right up to the wire. They shaved a month off in this last year, and that's due basically to them understanding our accounts now. We don't really want to lose that off the bat, and their cost proposal is reasonable growth from their last year. So we've estimated that they'll probably charge about $2,000 more than the cost estimate, just based on the I would say the options, but they have some estimates below on what they might charge additional based on, conditions. And there is a new federal guideline through Government Accounting Standards Board that we'll have to adopt and adapt to. And usually the auditors teach you how to do that, so they'll spend extra time doing that, maybe. So we're estimating about $2,500 more than their minimum engagement amount in this recommendation. So that's about all.
So they were about a month behind schedule. When they came in, they had to play catch up, correct?
On the very first year, yeah.
On the very first,
It
and
really
then
wasn't their
second year, they were behind.
Yes.
And then third year, were they still behind, but just better?
No, we finished a month earlier than the deadline. Well, I would say that we could probably shave another month off of that. If you want to use that as a benchmark, we could probably get another month in the subsequent year, just because most of the issues that were even causing us to delay, that were causing any types of delays this year, hopefully will not be duplicated next year, so.
Do we also change accounting systems in that time?
We're still in the midst of that, so we haven't switched over yet.
Okay.
That'll be FY26, so this is for the FY25 audit. We will still be on the old accounting system for record keeping purposes, and then 26 will be the first year, which starts July 1. That'll be on the new accounting system.
And that'll be on the new RFP.
Right.
All right, any further questions on that? Can I get a motion to approve both the social pinpoint and the expenditure for the audit engagement line?
So moved.
Was that second? Okay.
Any further discussion? Liz?
Garcia,
Yes.
Height,
Yes.
Klug,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Kennedy.
Yes, item number 4 is resolution for the 2025-20, our critical urban freight corridor designation. Jim?
All right, good afternoon, thank you. I'm gonna talk today, about the National Highway Freight Network, and not to cause confusion, but the last time we spoke, we talked about the National Multimodal Freight Network. So, a couple different networks we're gonna talk about. This is for updates, in Iowa to support their state freight plan updates. The network's composed of several segment types, primary highway freight system, or the interstate is not so designated, and critical urban and rural freight corridors. We're going to focus on urban freight corridors today. Just a quick overview of our national highway freight network. Today, the solid blue lines are those primary highway freight system networks. The dash blue are the interstate. It's not on the system, basically I-29. And in red, with a couple different dashes or solid lines, are what already exists within our network as a critical urban freight corridor, or what we are proposing new or changes to. So just briefly, we are given direction on how we go about identifying the critical urban freight corridors. In code, we are designated to do that in consultation with the state, and so that's what we're doing. It has to be inside of an urbanized area. If you'll recall, we did update our urbanized area boundary in 2024, I believe, following the 2020 census. So that's one reason to come to you and talk about these updates. And then significantly, Iowa has just taken on basically the limit per the state was doubled through the FAST Act, and IIJA, and we're just taking advantage of that. They've asked all MPOs to give inputs. So there's 4 elements or conditions that have to be met. We'll go through each of those quickly. The first one makes a lot of sense, is making connections to an intermodal facility itself. The example that I've shown here, Harry Langdon Boulevard and South Avenue already exists. That provides access to the Iowa interstate intermodal facility in Council Bluffs. And that's one example that we can use. The second one to the right, this is a new recommended. We came to you with this recommendation previously, I'm going to say in 2021. And the state at that time didn't agree with that, and so it wasn't identified, and I would say that's primarily just due to the length of the system, so it's probably competitive now. What this provides is an alternate path of freight, if we have something that happens with the I-29 or the I-80 corridor. And we have seen instances of that, so staff would recommend this as a change or an addition. Finally, last two here, serving as a freight generator example, again, given access to grain elevators and access to I-80. And then finally, regional importance. I'm not recommending anything new here, but we do recognize that bridge crossings across the Missouri River in particular are of critical importance for freight and transportation generally within our region. So in the table here, I'll go through each one individually. We are recommending 4 new critical urban freight corridors. The first one, South Expressway. This just extends a portion of South Expressway to some additional freight generators from 19th to 23rd Ave. US 275, as I highlighted previously, is a new extension, kind of, again, one of those priority areas for federal highway to connect across states. So we think, again, that's a good one. And 29th Avenue is a little extension. This one's hard, and the redesignated critical urban freight corridors is just getting away. We had bundled a couple roadways together, and just when somebody reads that and looks at it, we just had it mapped the wrong way in some instances. So this is just making sure that that segment goes to that grain elevator from 23rd Ave. And then South 24th Street provides some connectivity north and south, kind of midway through Council Bluffs industrial area, and so we would make that recommendation as well. The bottom 3, those redesignated, that already exists in one segment, and we're just splitting them out to make sure, again, that there's no confusion on which roadways are recommended. So finally, what will we do now following board approval? It would go to Iowa DOT. They'll review that, our recommendations, along with all the other NPOs within the state of Iowa, prioritize that, and come back to us. That approval then will be done at the Iowa DOT level, and they'll coordinate that with the local federal highway office. And ultimately, the goal is those to be updated within the state freight plan. So what else are we doing? A regional freight study. Very excited about that coming out here later this fall. And we're going to be fortunate enough to be able to take advantage of both the Iowa and Nebraska freight plan updates. Nebraska's will be kicking out probably about the same time ours does, or maybe a little sooner. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions at all for Jim? If not, could I have a motion to approve? Motion approved. Second. Motion. Further discussion? Liz?
Garcia,
Yes.
Pike,
Yes.
Klug,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Morrison,
Yes.
Walsh,
Yes.
Kendig.
Yes, thanks, Ron. And item number 5 is our draft of our transportation improvement program. Item A is our resolution, the 2025 programs awards. And then item B is a draft of our TIP when we can do our public comment period. Again, I'll take these together unless you choose not to. Court.
Hello. So, yeah, just real quick, where we are on the project selection timeline, we're almost to the finish line. We've gone through receiving the applications, comment period, going through our project selection committee meetings, and we had TTAC last week where we got a recommendation from them. So we had 7 TAP and CRP, so Transportation Alternatives Program and Carbon Reduction Program requests on the Nebraska side. As you can just kind of give you an idea of what we're trying to show here at the bottom, you can see kind of like what's available from each of the programs, the total requests. I know it's a little hard to see with the blue background. It's about 12.2 million in requests on the Nebraska side, with 18 million in available funding. So we do have enough to fund those projects. The Transportation Alternatives Committee is recommending funding 6 of them. I know that the funding is there for all 7 of them, but we actually have some congestion mitigation and air quality funding that we would like to use for Metro Transit's Blair and Fort Calhoun Public Transportation Feasibility Study. So we are, TAPC is not recommending funding that with either the TAP or the CRP, just because we got CMAQ funding to use on it. It's a good project for that program, so we're recommending we shift that project over there. So ultimately, about 15.7 million in both TAP and CRP funds being awarded for the Nebraska side. And then on the Iowa side, we got 2 applications totaling just a little bit over 600,000. Basically, the City of Council Bluffs is asking for some funding for doing the South Expressway trail connection as well as modernization of traffic signal cabinets. That project is actually very similar to an ongoing project in the City of Omaha, going through and modernizing signal cabinets. They've been pretty successful, very regularly submitting for both MAPA control funding programs as well as state control, mostly CMAQ funding through NDOT. Ultimately, with TAPC recommending 630, just over 630,000 in awards for these 2 projects. And this is basically just a summary of 15.7 million from on the Nebraska side and 630,000 on the Iowa side through 2031, which is the final year of this program. Any questions on any of the TAPC recommendations or any of the projects that are in the list? All right, moving on. And then on the surface transportation block grant side, we only opened a call for projects on the Iowa side this year. The Nebraska program is pretty full, although once we kind of get into opening up another year, which we're thinking we'll probably open a call for projects this fall on the Nebraska side. So we got 4 applications on the Iowa side, totaling just under 13 million. The Iowa side gets about 2.25 million each year for STPG funded projects. So we've got a little under 19 million available through 2031. This eats up a fairly significant portion of it, leaving about 6 million at the end of it. The project selection committee's recommendation is to fund 3 of the 4 projects. So the one project from Potawatomi County, 1 from Iowa DOT, and 1 from Metro Transit. Basically totaling a little under 10 million in awards. The pros-con recommendation regarding the Old Mormon Bridge Road application from Potawatomi County was rejected basically because of potential concerns with potential flooding. The road has had issues in the past where they build it and then it would get kind of washed out, and there was concerns about spending regional funding on a project that without additional, doing something to protect it from those flooding concerns, that we would be throwing significant amount of regional funds at a project that, maybe wouldn't last as long as another project. PROSCOM also cited issues with the amount of traffic that's on the roadway. So it doesn't carry a whole lot of traffic compared to some of the other projects that were in consideration. It was also the lowest scoring project that was received. So PROSCOM did not vote to advance that, only the other 3. When we took that to the Transportation Technical Advisory Committee last Friday, there was a discussion about it, and TTAC ultimately decided that they were going to carry PROSCOM's recommendation forward. So right now we have a recommendation from PROSCOM and from TTAC to only award those 3 projects you see here. We are intending to go back and re-engage PROSCOM. We spoke with Potawatomi County engineer, John Rasmussen, and there's basically asking him to put some additional information together for us about the project And I think we'll go back to ProsCom and have another conversation about it and see if they're interested in reevaluating the project before we come back with the final tip this year, and give both TTAC and this body another shot at considering that project. With that, that's effectively where we are on the SGBG Iowa award recommendation. I'd be happy to take any questions about these projects or kind of the process that we've gone through with the county.
The dates, you're ready to move on to agenda item D. That's just a motion to approve that you'll take public hearing.
That's correct. I do want to adjust one thing on there. I believe the agenda says a 30-day public comment period. Staff is requesting a 25-day public comment period in accordance with our public participation.
Any questions on that from the board?
Do you need an amendment for the 25-day or?
Yeah, why don't you make that in your motion, David?
I'd like to make a motion to approve with amending to the 25-day public comment period.
Sorry. Further discussion? Yes, thanks, Corey.
1 second. All right, Garcia,
Yes.
Ike,
Yes.
Clute,
Yes.
Rowe,
Yes.
Morrison, yes, Walsh,
Yes.
Hendig.
Yes. And item number 6 is our MAPA work program and budget, and again, we're gonna take both of these together. I feel like the state legislature with their Christmas package of bills on there. I keep bundling things, but
Well, it makes the presentation easier, so thank you, Mayor. So Christina, could you click into that presentation so I can advance the slides here? Thank you. So I'm going to take kind of a look here. We're approving the budget for MAPA through June 30th, so kind of revising our budget down to what we're actually going to be executing on, and then really what work's going to carry forward from July 1. And so when we report to our federal partners, we have to sort of forecast out on this amendment where we're going to end up by June 30th, and then sort of where we're going to start that continuous process again on July 1. And so I'm going to present these things to you really together because you kind of see them all on the tables before you. In the packet, most of my presentation is going to be on the line item budget, which begins on, they're not numbered, but it begins on, let's see, about the 5th page here. And I'll talk a little bit, I'll orient you to that page just where you can see it does say line item budget there at the top. But just a reminder, just on that budget schedule, you know, we start with our dues request back in January. We have our annual survey that's out for a number of months that kind of informs our work program priorities. And then this body takes action on our draft work program for our transportation activities in March, which is due to our federal and state partners on April 1. Last month, we bring kind of our full suite of budgets, the funds budget, the program budget, and the line item budget. And then in May, we bring those two things back together for a June 1 deadline for our work program. And so for consideration today is that forecast of where we're going to end up by June 30th with the FY25 budget and work programs, and then where we're picking up on July 1 and our anticipated work for the year ahead. And so since you saw the work program and budgets last month, we've revised down some of our estimates, mostly on the federal transportation side of things, really our forecast of what we're going to be executing on. So the left margin here is what's in the budgets for your consideration today, starting July 1 and carrying work forward. The items on the right margin are where we thought we would be last month. Most of the change here is on some of our pass-through and subcontracted subrecipients on the transportation side, notably those FTA 5310 subcontractors for those projects that are for seniors and disabled populations around the region. We have a number of years of funding available, which was represented in the first budget we presented. We're not going to be able to execute on all of those within a fiscal year, and so we're revising down some of that estimate. And there's really kind of a cascading effect through all of that. So the budget and expenses that we are showing for the year ahead, $7.6 million with about $288,000 of funding carried forward from FY25 to FY26, and expenses matching that there on that side. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail here on the expenses just so you can get a sense of where we are. And so on that line item budget, this is actually the second page of that line item budget, the expenses side of things. If you want to follow along on paper, but I'm going to be highlighting it kind of from top to bottom here as well. So our labor expenses are relatively flat from our 2025 budgeted level. We eliminated an FTE that had been funded primarily based on some COVID era funding. And so really, even though we've had some growth in some of the benefits that you all approved and cost of living increases across our staff, is really basically netted out to about the same labor expenses budget for our agency. We had about $440,000 of vacancy savings in FY25, sort of through attrition of certain positions, and then we had one FTE that had been authorized by the board that we did not fill in FY25 and are looking to do so here in FY26. Our non-labor costs, a little bit of a mixed picture here, but relatively flat overall. But if you look at some of these individual categories, we have larger office expenses related to primarily some software purchases for the agency on the transportation planning side of things. Our public engagement and forums, we revised down our estimate of what we'd be executing in FY25 because we're moving something from June to August. And so that really kind of swaps some of those costs that we had associated with the summit we'll be hosting in August. More to come on that. And then also doing a site visit. So we do a leadership exchange with another community. Doing both those things in a year kind of stacks all those things on the public engagement forums side of things as well. Our capital outlays are lower in FY26, so that's the blue column versus the gold column there. FY26 slightly lower with the kind of ramping down of our ERP implementation, kind of the software transition that Matt alluded to earlier. And then really professional development and travel expenses relatively flat year to year, with just some notable, some small increases just based on things that we've seen in the costs of travel and those professional associations. Other expenses here, so down at the bottom of that page, we have kind of the transfers here. The one I've highlighted there in red is the transfer of funds, kind of our surplus, the $336,000 from FY25 going into our cash reserve, which I'll touch on here at the very end of my presentation, just to kind of talk about that. But we set that cash reserve up really to be a conduit to connect kind of our fiscal years and really give the board discretion and authorization to carry those funds forward rather than them just sitting on our books. And it became a real hard issue of communicating where some of the dollars were. And so the cash reserve has really served as a way for us to show that money from one year is carried forward and allowing you all to authorize us to carry that work forward into the next year. And then we revised down our budget to align with that anticipated execution. So again, that subcontract, that procurement and subawards line item, that was closer to $5 million in the previous award. It's now $3.6 million. And that's much more in line with where we think we'll be for the year ahead. And then, is it going to go forward? Here we go. And so just some notes on other line items. You may recall when we approved our financial statements for the audit of FY 2024, so that was back in February. We noted that we had written off as a bad debt some of those anticipated administration expenses from Pacific Junction for the 2019 floods. Those were, basically housing recovery buyouts. And we said, we writing this off as a bad debt to kind of close the books on that and not hold that for another fiscal year based on our audit to kind of clean that piece up. But we noted that those grants were still open, and in FY25, we received about $140,000 of those reimbursements to date. Those are part of that surplus that you see carrying forward from year to year, in addition to some of those vacancy savings and things that we didn't have a chance to execute on in this year. And the other big piece of context here for MAPA, we talk a little bit about our budget almost being a biennium in some ways, of kind of these 2 years linked, with 1 year being more of a surplus and 1 year being more of a deficit in terms of how we're able to cash flow things, and really how the cash reserve really benefits us administratively. And a lot of that's driven by the NIROC aerial photography project, where we have these larger even number year purchases of shared aerial photography. MAPA facilitates those purchases. But for our members, we actually smooth out those line items on a budgetary schedule so that our members have kind of a fixed amount. But that does really kind of mess with how MAPA represents those costs year to year. So some years we have larger costs and lower revenues, and other years we have revenues coming in that aren't associated with costs in that year. And so really from our perspective, it's a good service that we can provide to our members, particularly some of our smaller counties, and smoothing out those expenses and having the benefit of using those funds to match a lot of our transportation planning activities and not require kind of additional cash contributions from our agency. On the fiscal side of things, though, it does create this kind of roller coaster that I just wanted you to all be aware of. We drew a picture this year, which is always worth 1,000 words. And so I'll stop there. And then the program budget here, just really showing this for your benefit. When you see our financial statements for FY 25 and 26, you'll see this kind of consolidation of these activities to these three broad categories. We had about 6 previously, and again, they showed kind of big wild oscillations with grants tapering and tapering off. And so with this, we think this is kind of a better representation of the agency's operations as a whole. And so this will be the pattern we go forward. This is just restating everything I've talked about here today, but showing you how you'll see it when those final audited financial statements come back to you at a later date. And then on the transportation side of things, again, this is really a subset of everything I've talked about. Transportation funding that we get from USDOT is the largest portion of funding that we get on an annual basis from the federal government. We have about $2.4 million of new funding in FY26 available to us, about $1.85 million in carryover funding. A lot of that consultant contracts and things like that for our mini grant program, and some of that Section 5310 funding that I noted before, and about $1.1 million in matching funds across in-kind match from things like aerial photography, from contributions from our members where, like on those pass-through agreements, we reimburse 70% of that cost, and we can count that 30% as match towards our program. We have about $184,000 of match from partners, so that's projects that they've asked MAPA to lead and have provided those cash contributions. And then MAPA cash match, which is a combination of dues and tip fees that we collect on an annual basis. And that total line item cost there for aerial photography is an estimate of $324,000. It's really based on when the flights are done and we get the imagery. Do we get it before June 30th or do we get it after July 1? That's our best guess for now. And then on the right-hand side here, I've got sort of a roll-up of our total UPWP budget, kind of across those direct labor, fringe, and payroll additive numbers, and then those direct non-labor costs, with the total UPWP budget, kind of that transportation-related work of $5.3 million. And then, if you look at our budget tables, it's kind of the first 2 pages of your packet there. We've consolidated, again, many of these MAPA activities, giving us a little bit more flexibility on the execution of our budget, and also really just aligning with these bigger categories of work that we do as an agency. You see $2.6 million of what we call above the line. Those are kind of MAPA's internal activities, and that's relatively consistent with where we were last year in FY25. And then we have below the line a lot of the money that we're either passing through to members through some of those pass-through agreements, subrecipients on the 5310 side, or consultant contracts that MAPA is going to be leading, like some of these survey tools like the social pinpoint that you saw, our regional freight plan, which Jim highlighted as kind of a consultant opportunity here. And then some of our Heartland 2050 mini grants, these larger projects that have been awarded by our project selection committees in previous years that the member has asked MAPA to lead on behalf of them and giving them access to those federal funds and MAPA carrying that kind of administrative burden for those. So again, this number has been revised down from the draft UPWP and our preliminary budget down to about $2.7 million, which we're much more confident on executing on this year. So with that, that's kind of where we've been in the FY 2025, wrapping that up here for the year, and then also a forecast of where we'll be for FY 26. The last item on here is actually a page here. And Christina, I don't know if you're able to go to the agenda and pull this up for the presentation. We have our cash reserve and investment plan. So we started this again at the end of FY 2024, at the start of FY 2025. So this is about a year old at this point for us. And this really is just kind of documentation of those assets that MAPA is holding that serve as our cash reserve and are really at the discretion of the board to direct on an annual basis. The first page here gives you a summary of where we are currently in forecasting as of June 30th, 2025. And then based on that budget that I just provided, where we'll be in FY 2026 at the end on June 30th. You see the investments there. Those are termed investments. In our finance committee meetings, finance committee minutes, when we present those financial statements on an annual monthly basis, we kind of show the term of those, when they're expiring and everything, but really it's this laddered approach so that as one longer term investment tapers off, we look at kind of what the best option is for that. It may be 3 years, it may be 5 years, and taking advantage of that at that time and kind of that laddered reserves policy that MAPA has used. And that's really what you see reflected here. On the back side, you see really our breakout of inlays, things that we're expecting coming into the cash reserve within the fiscal year. So that largely this year is those investment earnings kind of on those actual funds and those being put back into the cash reserve. We have outlays, which are anticipated expenses that we're looking for the board to direct. One of those is that Fund 10, the bottom line there, that general fund deficit. If you remember that $332,000 that was on the budget that I highlighted going from FY25 to FY26. This is how the board directs us to actually engage that. It passes through the cash reserve so that it's transparent to all of you. A couple of other items that we've identified, the MAPA Foundation strategic plan. This is our nonprofit development organization, which we're actually going through the current process of redesignating with the state. And this is MAPA's 501c3 that largely exists to serve as a vehicle for program income from CDBG projects that is sitting on the books of our Nebraska communities to find a home and a purpose outside of that. So it basically can be repurposed and it can be removed of those federal requirements through some of those lending arrangements. But it also then gives us an opportunity to partner with communities. Because that is a relatively new thing for MAPA, we don't actually have a very proactive plan for how to do that. And we want to engage with partners around the region to understand where does this fit into the landscape of this? How are we more proactive? Is there a better use for this? We've currently used it for the Blair Workforce Housing Project, which is great and successful and will have its own life. But is there other opportunities to pair that with other resources around the region and make a difference? We have a capital purchase here of employee workstations to build out our office here for kind of the final piece. I don't think it'll be $30,000, but authorizing that just in case. And then a drone purchase. MAPA had a drone that was largely good for some of the aerial photography work that we've done, and you've seen in a lot of our projects and programs over the years. With the disaster recovery work that's MAPA's really a partner in, getting some requests for some larger purchase or a better set of tools available for our members to tap in. Not exactly sure what that looks like, but we wanted to authorize an amount that was relevant to this. We actually worked with Douglas County GIS, who just went through a similar process to get this kind of estimate. And we're going to be working with our partners to understand where MAPA fits into this over the next several months as we evaluate a new drone. We had an FAA pilot that left us. That was Owen Stuckey, our old GIS coordinator. And we have several staff that are looking at getting that FAA certification and hopefully to support our members. So those outlays are things that we are anticipating going to outlays from the cash reserve. And then these designated reserves are things that are just held in trust within the cash reserve, but for a designated purpose. The agency dissolution reserve and capital reserve are things that the board established really to essentially have the resources on hand to take care of those expenses. This is part of our interlocal agreement. Capital reserve has really remained at $50,000 for as long as I've been here. I think we've used it a couple of times for some of our larger purchases, like the office redesign that we did several years ago. But one new line item here that I wanted to talk about is this disaster recovery reserve. One of the challenges we have with MAPA's business model is, our reliance on federal funding often doesn't give us kind of that point in time relevancy to our members, particularly on the staffing side of things. And we've seen successively now over the last years, the frequency of disasters that are occurring in our region and the delay in those federal funds being available to support our staffing work is really leaving us with about an 18 to 24 month period of time where we don't have resources to actually staff up to respond to that and be that kind of coordinator at the regional level of some of those issues. And so this reserve, given that the cash reserve is relatively new, if there was ever a purpose that MAPA sees as kind of a mission-driven way of taking these reserves and having them available to our members on a more of just like a board-directed basis, it's really going to be around that disaster recovery. We have a pretty good sense of what's coming and going for our budget on an annual basis. Those disasters that really kind of shake us off of, our bicycle, if you will, for a metaphor, that doesn't do it. This estimate is really based on an FTE, kind of a senior FTE for 2 years, which has been, I would say, relevant to about how long it's taken for some of our EDA planning funds, which have supported FTEs on an ongoing basis for disaster and COVID recovery. Not authorizing that expenditure today, but we would come back with a specific board action to say, we have this scope of work from our members. Here's the work that we're going to undertake for this set period of time, and it would allow you to authorize kind of those additional funds to take advantage of that. I don't know what that looks like today, but I can tell you our emergency management partners are looking for MAPA to take on some of these more continuous planning roles, which may be a good use of some of these funds. And so that's the cash reserve. Back to that front page, if you look at where we are in FY 2025 versus FY 2026, currently have about $2 million in that reserve. At the end of next year, we'll have just under $1.8 million in the reserve. And then that 700,000 of designated reserve is really just what is left to be available to be directed by the board, and kind of giving you a sense of MAPA's assets beyond those annual contributions that we get on an annual basis. So that's items A and B, Mayor. So I appreciate your ability to take them all as one, because it's a little bit of a web.
Does anyone on the board, any questions for Mark?
Like there was a line item that said a transfer to the officials fund. What's that?
Yeah, so every year we set aside about $15,000 of funds that really are directed for the board of directors or council of officials members to attend largely the NARC conference in Washington, D.C. That's mostly what we've used it for in the past. It's just kind of a line item anticipating some of those costs associated with that travel, and members of this board really kind of connecting with regional or national peers from other regional organizations. We've never spent $15,000 in a year, but we always just kind of replenish it up to that amount to have that available. And certainly with, Supervisor Vinton taking that leadership role within NARC, it was really kind of a way of supporting that. But yeah, so when you all travel with us to NARC, the costs hit that. But we've never spent $15,000, but I mean, that's been that number for, it's every year. I don't think it's ever changed.
Is the remainder 68,000 bad debt Pacific Junction uncollectible, do you think?
No, so that's a great question. I could highlight that. So the funding that we've received reimbursements on to date is for 2 of the administration contracts that we had. So we had an administration contract for CDBG, and I think we've received all of that to date. I'm looking, Natasha's not here, but I have the spreadsheet on my desk. But yes, we've received all of the CDBG. We just received the last payment was for the FRF program, which was a state program, and some funds to buy out properties. The piece we're remaining is HMGP. So it's through the Department of Homeland Security Emergency Management Division. That grant is still open. We participated in some of the closeout activities. I think we've highlighted it with this board over the last, I think it's 2 years now, but that grant remains open. Those funds remain available to be reimbursed to Pacific Junction to then pay us. And so I think we're still optimistic based on the dispensation of the other funds that we will get those. When we get those, not sure. That's a great question.
I have 2 more questions.
Yeah.
I know in the past you had said that you've been having trouble paying GIS staff just because of what the counties are paying versus what we're paying.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that there's enough in those positions to be able to, I guess, cover for that? Where we keep losing people?
Yeah, I think part of it functionally, with MAPA, part of the challenge has been that position kind of becomes an all of IT and everything else. And so there's always been this kind of tension between kind of that core mission of, delivering on some of the GIS work that we do as a region and the leadership there versus some of the operational pieces of just keeping MAPA going and, responding to some of that. And that's something that we're continuing to work on. So our IT sort of infrastructure is currently provided through our lease through Metro Transit. We're working with them to evaluate if there's an opportunity to go to more of a consulted, IT services. There might be some capital costs associated with that to, actually separate or segregate our networks. But Metro Transit isn't really interested in providing that service. And so there always has to be this cascade to staff for somebody to pick up some elements of that work. We've narrowed that down now with rehiring Josh. We've tried to kind of we did this with Owen too, but it's trying to narrow that down. I think a lot of it is sort of in-demand careers. And so you look across, tech, you look across IT, you look across a lot of those different places where people have a very specific set of skills. There's a lot of opportunities for them. But I think we've looked at this kind of in the classification of where that is, and I think we've got some flexibility depending on the scope of that role, of where it goes. If they're managing staff, we have an opportunity to move it to more of a department manager type of role. And that makes us a lot more competitive. But even just looking across agencies like ourselves, we do sort of fall right in the middle of the range for agencies like ourselves. We just know there are other career opportunities for those skill sets within the Metro that, require us to be thoughtful about what those positions look like here. That's a great question.
The other question I just had, I know when we visited this cash reserve question, I don't know that if it was ever settled on what percentage you think of your budget you needed in cash reserve. And I know part of that was hard because of the transfers of federal funds. It's now always consistent, but did you guys give thought to what that right number is?
Well, I will tell you, when we brought 15% in one year, people thought that was great. When we had closer to 25% in another year, people thought that was great on the board. And we're right around, I think, 22% of our budget right now. I think that's very healthy. And just Matt, our finance director, served on a peer exchange with a number of our peer organizations, really talking about, you know, with the changes in some of the reimbursement of federal programs in particular, or the sort of, the shifting landscape of funding availability for programs, how our organization's positioned. We were the only one with this large of a cash reserve that actually allowed us to be more flexible with how we kind of could taper things in and out should we need to come to that. We haven't yet, but so I feel very comfortable that we're in the neighborhood of that. But if the board feels that it should be smaller or larger, we can sort of navigate that on an annual basis. But we've never as a board you've never had as a board kind of a specific target in mind. I think that kind of 15 to 30% has felt right, and I think that's kind of been where a lot of our member communities have been when they're looking at this. But there's no requirement of that, but should that be an interest of the board, we can put some thought into what that number should be. But because it's sort of been relatively flat year to year, we feel pretty good that we're at least in the neighborhood.
My last question, what number makes up the 22%? Is that the 2 million number, the 1.7 or?
That was the 1.7 million as a divisor to the FY26 budget. So kind of where we end up at the end of FY26.
Any other questions or comments from Mike? If not, I would entertain a motion to approve item number 6, both A and B, please.
So moved.
Second. There's no further discussion. Liz?
Garcia.
Yes.
Pike.
Yes.
Klug.
Yes.
Rowe.
Yes.
Morrison.
Yes.
Walsh.
Yes.
Kendig.
Yes. Agenda I is discussion. Does any of the board members have anything they'd like to bring forward? If not, I will go ahead and move to agenda item K. Wish everybody a very good Memorial Day, and I call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
I did.
All right, thank you. That covered a lot. Yeah.
No, we were gonna get you there.
I will get everything started. Okay.
Now you
Thank
got
you.
more stuff.
Yeah, and then we got Memorial thing tonight, and then, Trent Baggett, Jeff Wills are getting
Right
from
All
Omaha.
right, yes, I will first stuff.
I wanted to-
Yes, yeah, whatever you
What was they doing? They give them their game?
Yeah, he's told me his wife has to do 4 pages.